Hello class, my name is Daniel. I'll be presenting with Mohammed and Kadir, and we'll be discussing on the research paper titled Big Data and Supply Chain Decisions, the impact of volume, variety, and velocity properties on the bullwhip effect. And throughout the course of this presentation, we will give a quick insight into what the research paper is about, to talk about the objective, discuss the background, the simulation study that was done during the course of this research, highlight the supporting points, also discuss the limitations the authors faced during the course of this research, what the authors expect to be done if further studies were conducted on this same topic, and we'll conclude by tying everything together. And once we're done with all of this, we would take some questions from you and try to provide answers to them. All right. So for some of you, you've probably heard of the term bullwhip effect, and for some of you, you haven't. But the main goal of this research paper is to reduce the bullwhip effect we find in the supply chain processes. And throughout the course of this research paper, we were concerned about what the big data levels were, so the properties of the data, what were the problems causing the bullwhip effect, and what various approaches can we take or implement to mitigate the risks we find during the course of this bullwhip effect. So this is pretty much an high-level introduction on what this research is all about. So the question is, what is a bullwhip effect? Well, we found a good definition on Investors Trading Academy. So we just have you listen to this, and then we'll come back to finish up the presentation.
The bullwhip effect refers to a frustrating phenomenon that frequently starts with falling customer demand, although it could start with the reverse, a previously unanticipated rapid rise in customer demand. This falling customer demand prompts retailers to under-order so as to reduce their inventories. The bullwhip effect can be explained as an occurrence detected by the supply chain, where orders sent to the manufacturer and supplier create larger variance than the sales to the end customer. These irregular orders in the lower part of the supply chain develop to be more distinct higher up in the supply chain. This variance can interrupt the smoothness of the supply chain process, as each link in the supply chain will over or underestimate the product demand, resulting in exaggerated fluctuations. Through the numerous stages of a supply chain, key factors such as time and supply of order decisions, demand for the supply, lack of communication and disorganization can result in one of the most common problems in supply chain management. This common problem is known as the bullwhip effect.
Now that we know the definition of a bullwhip effect, our objective is to mitigate this effect using big data. We would also like to find which level of big data has the greatest impact on the bullwhip effect. And lastly, we have to explain the effectiveness of using big data in mitigating this bullwhip effect. Before now, a lot of research has been done on how to mitigate the bullwhip effect. For our research, the authors considered using big data, and what this means is it's collecting and analyzing a large amount of data from various resources. And we'll focus on three main things which are called the data levers. The first is the volume, so how big of a data you have, and the author clearly points out that what we refer to as big data now might be small data in the future. Also, another lever is velocity. And what this means is how fast can you process the big data you have. Lastly, the variety, which is connoted as VA. The variety is so important because it helps you take into consideration other people's data. Taking into account other people's data helps you eliminate bias. So for example, when taking the data for diesel engines, it's important to get the data from the likes of Bosch and Cummins and not just from one side, say Bosch or Cummins. Another good example will be in gathering the data for communications. Instead of you just getting the data from T-Mobile, You can get the data from T-Mobile, Sprint rather, and the likes of AT&T. This way, combining all those data helps you get a good variety of the overall supply chain of communications. According to the author, there are three main causes for the bullwhip effect. The first is called demand signal forecasting, and these are based on aggregated demand data. The second is called rationing game, based on exaggerated orders. And this is one of the big effects because people tend to use their emotions and not actual data to place orders. And lastly, it's order batching. And a good way to explain this would be what incentives do you get when you place one size of order from another, right? This is based on data points and demand information. According to the author, there are 5 ways to mitigate the bullwhip effect. The first one is shortening the lead time. So the logistics factor, how can we shorten the lead time? Second is granting access to the POS information. So POS means point of sales information. So think ERP and beyond. The third is direct control of downstream inventory. The fourth approach to mitigating the bullwhip effect is restricting the buyer's flexibility. So think of order to policy. Every time the buyer places an order, it has to be to the policy. And lastly, reducing the transactional cost of orders. These are the 5 approaches to mitigate the bullwhip effect according to the author. And now I'll hand it over to my teammates to continue with the presentation. Thank you.